"Sir, you need to move." The words sliced through the cabin like a blade. Marcus Ellison had barely settled into his first-class seat. Seat 2A, window, leather cushions still cool against his arm, when the flight attendant's voice hit, him with the kind of sharpness that didn't come from politeness but from suspicion. Her smile was stretched, brittle, polished like cheap glass. Her eyes, though, gave her away. Cold, disbelieving. "Excuse me?" Marcus said. Calm, deep voice, steady but quiet. He didn't look up from the boarding pass in his hand. His thumb ran across the ink, tracing the words, "First class." The attendant leaned in closer, just enough so her perfume, expensive but suffocating, mixed with the sterile scent of the cabin air. "Sir, I don't know how you got this ticket, but first class is reserved for premium passengers only. You have 10 minutes to move or I'll call security." The man in the seat across the aisle froze mid-motion, coffee cup halfway to his lips. A couple in row 3 exchanged glances. The cabin, buzzing a moment ago with the casual chatter of wealthy travelers, slipped into an eerie hush. Marcus finally raised his eyes. His gaze was calm, measured, but it carried the weight of a man who had built companies from dust, signed billion-dollar contracts, and commanded boardrooms filled with skeptics who doubted him until it was too late. "I believe," he said slowly, holding out the ticket. "This is mine." The attendant glanced at the slip of paper, then back at him, and laughed, short and sharp. "Sir, you printed this off yourself, didn't you? Let's not make this difficult." Phones tilted, not many, not openly, just enough. A young woman, a few rows back, adjusted her hair, but her screen was angled, already recording. Marcus didn't flinch. His posture remained perfect, suit pressed, wristwatch gleaming beneath the cabin lights. He looked like exactly what he was. Wealth embodied in quiet elegance. But to her, to the airline's eyes, he looked like a man who didn't belong. "You're making a mistake," Marcus said. The attendant's smile faltered, frustration breaking through. "You have 10 minutes. After that, I'll have the cops remove you." A low murmur rippled through the passengers. Some smirked, entertained by the scene. Others shifted uncomfortably. A balding man muttered, "Unbelievable," though no one could tell if he meant Marcus sitting there or the way he was being treated. The pilot's voice crackled faintly through the intercom, reminding everyone of the upcoming flight duration, but the announcement went unheard. The real drama was already unfolding. Marcus leaned back, silent. His hands rested on the armrests, steady. He would not move. But just 2 seats away, in 2C, a man hidden behind dark glasses and a baseball cap lowered his newspaper. He had been silent since boarding, but now his jaw tightened. His name, unknown to most in the cabin, carried weight across the world. If revealed, it would flip the power dynamic in an instant. But for now, he watched. The attendant straightened, smoothed her uniform, and snapped her fingers toward another staff member. A tall male steward approached, his expression already carved with judgment. "What's the issue?" "This gentleman refuses to leave first class," she said. "Claims he has a ticket." The steward folded his arms, gaze raking over Marcus, from polished shoes to sharp haircut. "Sir, you heard my colleague? You've got 10 minutes, move to coach or what?" Marcus asked quietly. His tone didn't rise. He didn't need it to. His words landed like iron. The steward blinked, thrown for a moment, but pressed on. "Or the police will escort you, and you won't be flying tonight. Simple." The young woman's phone caught every syllable, every flicker of arrogance on their faces. Her heart raced. She knew this was bigger than just one man in one seat. This was a story. The cabin tensed further as a child asked his mother in a whisper, "Mom, why are they yelling at him?" The mother hushed him quickly, darting her eyes nervously between Marcus and the staff. Marcus set the boarding pass gently, on the tray table. His fingers were steady, his breath even. His silence filled the space louder than any protest. Finally he spoke. "Call them then." The words dropped like a hammer. A gasp scattered through the cabin. The attendant's painted smile collapsed entirely. The steward's brows shot up. This was not how passengers usually responded. Most folded, embarrassed, and shuffled back to coach. But this man sat like a king whose throne could not be touched. The attendant hissed, "Fine, you asked for it." She spun on her heel and stormed toward the front of the cabin, heels clicking like gunshots on the narrow aisle floor. The passenger sat frozen, caught between discomfort and fascination. And from seat 2C, the hidden man in the baseball cap exhaled, slowly, muttering just loud enough for Marcus to hear. They don't know who they're dealing with. Marcus didn't look at him. He didn't need to. His calm half-smile said enough. The countdown to chaos had begun. But what happened next, when the police arrived at the cabin door, would shake every single person on that plane. The cabin door swung open with a hiss. 2 airport police officers stepped inside, boots heavy against the narrow aisle. Their uniforms were sharp, black belts clinking with radios and cuffs. Every passenger sat straighter, the air thickening. With tension, the lead officer, a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head, scanned the cabin. His eyes landed on Marcus, not the loudest person, not the most frantic, but the calmest man in the room. Still, the flight attendant pointed like she'd just uncovered a criminal. "That's him," she spat. "He's refusing to leave, causing a disturbance." The officer raised his eyebrows. He expected belligerent, shouting, maybe a drunk. Instead, he found a man in a charcoal suit, posture perfect, ticket on the tray table like evidence waiting to be examined. Marcus looked up slowly. His voice was deep even. "Good evening, officers." The second cop, younger, glanced at the paper on the tray. "Boarding pass?" Marcus nodded once. "Right here. Seat 2A, purchased, confirmed, and cleared." The officer picked it up, studied it. His jaw flexed. Nothing about it looked fake. He looked at the airline staff. "What's the problem?" The attendant's smile returned, though thinner now. "He doesn't fit the profile of our premium passengers. We believe the ticket may have been acquired improperly. We can't have him in first class." The younger cop blinked. "Doesn't fit the profile?" Her cheeks flushed. She tried to recover. "I mean, look at him. He doesn't look like..." "Like what?" Marcus interrupted, his tone still low but now edged with steel. The cabin went dead silent. Even the air vents seemed to hush. Every ear tilted forward, every phone inched higher. The older officer sighed, shifting his weight. "Sir, maybe we can just..." Marcus raised a hand. "No. Let her finish. What don't I look like?" the attendant faltered. Her throat tightened, eyes darting between him and the officers. The steward stepped in quickly. "He doesn't look like the kind of passenger we usually serve in first class. That's all." Laughter bubbled, bitter, disbelieving. From somewhere in row 4, a passenger whispered, "That's code if I've ever heard it." The young woman with the phone zoomed in, capturing every bead of sweat forming on the steward's brow. Her heart hammered. She knew this clip would set fire to the internet. The older officer turned back to Marcus. "Sir, are you refusing to move?" Marcus met his gaze squarely. "I paid for this seat. I will sit in this seat. Simple. Undeniable." The officer hesitated. He wasn't used to quiet defiance. Most people cracked under the uniform, but this man didn't flinch. Before he could answer, a voice came from 2 seats away. Low, familiar, carrying the weight of fame. "He's telling the truth. I saw him. Board. I know him." Head snapped toward seat 2C. The man in the baseball cap slowly removed his sunglasses. Gasps echoed through the cabin. It was Darius Cole, NBA champion, global icon, a face on billboards from Times Square to Tokyo. The murmurs erupted like a wave. "Oh my God, that's Darius Cole. What's he doing here?" The officers blinked, thrown off balance. Even the arrogant steward stuttered. Mr. Cole?" Darius leaned forward, eyes sharp, voice commanding now. "This man is Marcus Ellison, CEO of Ellison Global, billionaire, philanthropist. He doesn't need to prove a damn thing to you. You should be apologizing. The cabin exploded in whispers. Billionaire? CEO? The name rippled through the rows like electricity. Some passengers Googled furiously, screens glowing with search results, photos of Marcus on Forbes covers, headlines about his companies, his donations, his face. The attendant's painted smile dissolved completely. Panic flickered in her eyes, but the steward wasn't finished. Pride clung to him like armor. Even if that's true, he still— No! Darius snapped, standing to his full height. He towered over the steward, presence filling the aisle like thunder. Enough. I've flown this airline for years, and I've never seen anyone treated like this in first class. You singled him out, and we all know why. Every phone in the cabin rose now, recording openly. There was no hiding it anymore. The officers shifted uneasily. The younger one muttered, "This is going to be on the news." The older officer sighed, rubbing his temples. He knew they were no longer dealing with a simple passenger dispute. This was about to blow up. Marcus finally stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence alone commanded the space. "I have built companies that employ thousands," he said, looking straight at the steward. "I've donated more to this country's schools than your entire airline has in the last decade. And tonight I wanted nothing more than to sit quietly in my seat and fly home." His voice deepened, calm but resonant, filling every corner of the cabin. "But you saw me. And you decided I didn't belong." The steward's throat bobbed. The attendant shrank back, wringing her hands. Marcus leaned closer, voice a whisper, now razor sharp. "That will be your mistake." The cops hadn't even responded when a new voice cut through the air. The captain's, summoning the staff urgently to the cockpit. Something bigger was happening, and the cabin braced for impact. The intercom crackled overhead. Flight attendants to the cockpit immediately. The captain's voice was clipped, tense. Every word carried urgency. The female attendant flinched. She glanced from Marcus to the cockpit door, torn between fight and obedience. The steward muttered under his breath and hurried forward, vanishing past the curtain. The officers lingered, unsure whether to step aside or continue the standoff. The younger one adjusted his belt nervously. "What's going on?" No one answered. The cabin pulsed with whispers. Passengers leaned into aisles, phones recording openly now, no shame. The glow of screens painted faces in blue light as the tension spread like wildfire. Marcus remained standing, broad shoulders squared, his expression unreadable. He could feel eyes drilling into him from every row. Admiration, doubt, hatred, respect, a mix of everything America poured onto men who looked like him when they dared to succeed. Darius Cole sank back into his seat, arms folded, eyes narrowed. His presence was a shield, but he knew this fight wasn't his to finish. He was here to amplify, not to lead. Then the cockpit door cracked open. The captain stepped out, silver hair, crisp uniform, shoulders rigid. His gaze swept the cabin and froze on Marcus. His face tightened, not with confusion, but with something darker. Recognition. "Mr. Ellison," he said carefully. "May I have a word?" The passengers stiffened. Some gasped. They knew now. This wasn't just about a seat. The captain knew who Marcus was. Marcus didn't move. "We can speak here." The captain's jaw flexed. He wasn't used to refusal. "This situation is compromising the safety of the flight. I need you to step aside." A laugh, bitter and sharp, slipped from Marcus's throat. "Safety? You call humiliation safety?" The young woman recording leaned forward in her seat. Her hands trembled, but she kept the camera steady. This was gold. The captain's voice hardened. "Mr. Ellison, cooperate or this plane doesn't leave the ground." A man in row 5 barked, "Then let it sit, he has every right to that seat." Applause scattered, hesitant at first, then growing. A woman in row 6 joined in. "Yeah, we all saw what happened." The tide shifted. Passengers were no longer silent. Witnesses. They were participants. The cabin was dividing, half emboldened, half shrinking in discomfort. The older officer lifted a hand. Captain, with all due respect, this doesn't look like a safety issue. The man has his ticket. We're not putting cuffs on him. The captain's face flushed, authority slipping. His voice dropped to a growl. You don't understand, this man. But before he could finish, Marcus spoke. His tone carried across the rows, calm but commanding. This man, he said, pointing to himself, has built more than you could imagine. And tonight you all showed your true colors. Every insult, every doubt, every assumption. Phones angled higher. You didn't see a CEO. You didn't see a father. You didn't see a man who earned his place in the seat. You saw black skin and decided it was counterfeit. The words cut like glass. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, some averting their eyes. Others nodded fiercely. The young woman filming bit her lip. Tears threatened to sting, but she steadied herself. The world needed to hear this. The captain clenched his fists. Enough of this performance. You think your money means you own the skies? No, Marcus replied, eyes narrowing. But my dignity does. The roar of applause erupted this time. Real, thunderous, uncontainable. Even those who had hesitated now joined in, clapping, shouting. The sound rattled the overhead bins. The female attendant shrank into the galley, pale as paper. The steward hadn't returned. The captain's authority evaporated in the noise. He barked, "If this disruption continues, I'll cancel the flight." "Do it," a voice yelled from coach. "We'll walk, but we're not letting you throw him off." The officers exchanged looks. They weren't trained for mutiny. This wasn't an unruly passenger anymore. This was a movement. And then it happened. The young woman hit stop on her recording. Hands shaking, she tapped furiously, uploading the clip to social media with the caption, "Black CEO denied his seat. This is America. Ellison flight." Within seconds, notifications pinged. The clip spread like fire through dry brush, retweets and shares multiplying. A global audience was about to witness what this cabin already knew. Marcus, still calm, lowered himself back into his seat. He fastened his belt slowly, deliberately. "Gentlemen," he said to the officers, "I'm not moving. This seat is mine. You'll have to decide which side of history you want to stand on." The older officer nodded once, stepping back. He knew. He had seen enough. But the captain's voice thundered over him. "Then this flight isn't leaving." And with that, the lights flickered. A chime rang. The intercom buzzed again. "Attention, passengers." The captain's voice rang through, sharp and trembling with fury. "Due to circumstances beyond our control, this flight is temporarily grounded." Gasps, groans, outrage. The chaos had begun. But as the plane sat motionless, phones buzzing with notifications, Marcus Ellison's story had already left the cabin. By the time the airline realized it, the world outside was watching. The plane sat grounded on the tarmac, but inside it felt like a courtroom. Phones buzzed as passengers refreshed timelines. The video was already climbing. Retweets, comments, hashtags. The cabin was no longer an isolated stage. It was global. Theater. The captain stormed back into the cockpit, slamming the door so hard the sound echoed through first class. The female attendant followed him like a shadow, leaving the passengers and police to stew in the charged air. Marcus sat calmly in seat 2A, hands folded in his lap, eyes forward. His body language didn't scream victory. It screamed patience. The quiet patience of a man who knew storms broke themselves against rock. Darius leaned toward him. "Brother, you realize what's happening out there? This is viral already." He held up his phone. The screen glowed with notifications, thousands of likes, thousands of shares, the headline forming itself in real time. Marcus didn't glance. Let it happen. Behind them, whispers grew louder. "Did you hear? He's a billionaire. Ellison Global. I read about him last year. Man, they didn't even check his ticket." The young woman who had uploaded the video was trembling. She clutched her phone like it was a weapon, scrolling through the avalanche of comments. "This is outrageous. Sue that airline. We're watching history happen." Her cheeks flushed. She hadn't meant to ignite a storm, but deep down she knew. This was bigger than her fear. The older officer finally broke the silence. He addressed Marcus directly. "Sir, I can't force you out. You're within your rights." The younger one nodded, voice lower. "We're here to keep the peace, not escalate. You haven't done anything wrong." Some passengers clapped again, not as loud as before, but with conviction. But just then, the steward reappeared from the cockpit, face slick with sweat. His tone was different now, strained, cautious. "Mr. Ellison, the captain insists you disembark. We can arrange another flight for you." A groan swept the cabin. Marcus raised his eyes slowly, voice even but laced with fire. "Let me make sure I understand. I pay for a ticket, I sit in my seat. And because of your prejudice, I'm asked to leave the plane I paid to board, while everyone else continues as though nothing happened?" The steward's throat bobbed. We're trying to de-escalate." "No," Marcus said. "You're trying to erase." The words rang out like a gavel strike. Phones captured every syllable. A woman in row 7 stood. Her voice shook but carried. "He's not leaving." "If he goes, I go too." Another man rose. "Same here," it spread. Seatbacks creaked as passengers stood one after another. Some stayed seated, muttering about delays, but enough stood that the steward's face drained of color. "You can't be serious," he whispered. Darius smirked, folding his arms. "Looks like you've got a mutiny." The officers glanced at each other, unsure whether to intervene or stay out of it. The older one muttered, "This is above our pay grade." The young woman recording whispered into her phone's mic, narrating live now. "Half the plane is standing with him. They're refusing to sit down until he's allowed to fly." Her live stream exploded with viewers. Comments poured in faster than she could read. "This is history in motion. People power. Protect Marcus Ellison." The steward's radio crackled. The captain's furious voice barked, "Shut this down, I want him off my plane." The steward froze. He looked at Marcus, at the officers, at the passengers. For the first time, he realized he wasn't in control. Marcus leaned back, voice calm but commanding. "Tell your captain this. If he throws me off, he throws us all off, and the world will know exactly why." The steward's lips parted, but no sound came out. His authority crumbled in the weight of Marcus's words. The older officer finally spoke again, tone sharp now. "Enough. This isn't a security threat. This is your company's mistake. If you push this, it's going to spiral out of control." "It already has," Darius muttered. He held up his phone, showing Marcus the screen. The video had hit 1 million views. In less than half an hour, Marcus finally allowed himself a small, quiet smile. The steward turned pale. He stammered something about procedures, then disappeared into the cockpit again. For a moment, silence held. The only sound was the buzz of phones and the steady hum of the grounded engines. Then Marcus spoke, not to the staff, not to the officers, but to the cabin itself. "You all witnessed it," he said softly. "You know what happened here. This isn't just about me. It's about every person who's ever been told they don't belong in a place they earned. Every door slammed, every seat denied. Tonight it was me. Tomorrow it'll be someone else." His voice thickened, deep with emotion, but never cracked. "But dignity is not optional. Respect is not for sale. And no amount of money buys humanity." Tears welled in the young woman's eyes as she filmed. The comments scrolling across her live feed blurred. She whispered, "God bless you," though he couldn't hear. The passengers sat in silence, hanging on every word. Even those who hadn't stood before looked down at their shoes, shame heavy in their chests. Marcus leaned back in his seat again. "I'm not leaving this plane. If you'd like to cancel the flight, do it, but understand, the flight is already canceled in the court of public opinion." It was the line, the one that would headline every article, every news segment, the one that would echo beyond the cabin. The officers stepped back, arms folded. Neutral now. Observers. And then, like a final strike of thunder, the intercom crackled once more. The captain's voice, strained and venomous. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, this flight is officially canceled." Chaos erupted. Groans, yells, shouts. But amidst it all, Marcus sat unmoved, gaze steady, his dignity untouched. The airline thought canceling the flight would bury the incident. They had no idea the story was already too big to contain. By the time Marcus stepped off that plane, the terminals and the media would be waiting. The cabin doors unsealed with a hiss. The captain's voice had declared the flight canceled, but the real explosion waited beyond the aircraft walls. Passengers filed out, muttering, phones still buzzing with notifications. Some cursed the inconvenience. Others whispered about what they had just witnessed, already preparing to retell the story at dinner tables and offices. Marcus rose last. His movements were unhurried, deliberate. He smoothed his jacket, lifted his briefcase, and adjusted his cufflinks as if walking into a boardroom, not into chaos. Darius Cole waited beside him. "You ready for this?" Marcus's eyes didn't flicker. "I've been ready my whole life." The officers trailed behind them as they stepped off the plane. But instead of a quiet, empty terminal, they were met with a wall of humanity. Hundreds of travelers crowded the gate. Screens glowed everywhere, the video of the confrontation already circulating. Strangers murmured Marcus's name. Some gasped, realizing the man from the headlines, the billionaire CEO, was standing right there. And then the shouting began. "Is that him?" "That's Marcus Ellison. Tell us what happened." Microphones emerged like weapons. News crews had already arrived, tipped off by the viral video. Cameras flashed. The young woman who had uploaded the clip stood near the back of the crowd, overwhelmed as strangers thanked her for sharing. Her live stream still rolled, broadcasting the scene to tens of thousands. The steward who had tried to eject Marcus hovered near the jet bridge, pale and sweating, watching his career unravel. The female attendant clutched her clipboard like a shield, mascara streaked with tears. The captain never appeared. He remained locked in the cockpit, refusing to face what he had unleashed. Marcus walked forward slowly, dignity intact, the crowd parting around him like water. A reporter shoved a microphone toward him. "Mr. Ellison, what do you have to say about the airline's treatment of you tonight?" Marcus stopped. Cameras zoomed, phones tilted higher, the air stilled, waiting. He spoke calmly, clearly, every word echoing. "I paid for a seat. I was told I didn't belong in that seat. That is the story." Murmurs swept through the crowd. The simplicity was devastating. He continued. "This isn't about money, it isn't about fame, it's about respect, dignity. The right of every person, no matter how they look, to sit where they've earned the right to sit." Applause broke out. Not polite, but raw, angry, supportive. Travelers who had no idea who he was before tonight now saw themselves in his struggle. Darius stepped forward, removing his cap fully now. Cameras erupted in flashes. "This man," Darius declared, voice booming, "has done more for communities than this airline ever will. And they tried to throw him out like trash. We're not letting that slide." Cheers, shouts. A chant began. "Justice, justice, justice." The officers stepped aside, realizing the crowd wasn't hostile to Marcus. They were hostile to the airline. The steward tried to slip away, but someone shouted, "That's him! That's the one who called the cops!" Phones turned on him, instantly recording his panicked retreat. His name, his face, his words, all preserved forever online. Marcus raised a hand, silencing the crowd. "Don't waste your anger on one man. This is bigger than him, bigger than tonight. This is about every gate, every plane, every boardroom, every classroom where someone is told they don't belong." He let the words sink in. His voice didn't tremble. It resonated. "I won't file a lawsuit tonight. I won't scream. I won't curse. But I will say this. Dignity is not a privilege. It's a right. And if we allow companies to decide who deserves it and who doesn't, then we've all lost something greater than a seat." Silence. Then thunderous applause. Reporters shouted over each other. Passengers chanted, strangers cried. The young woman filming wiped her eyes. Her video was no longer just viral. It was history. Behind them, airline executives scrambled down the terminal, faces stiff with panic. They whispered urgently into radios, already calculating losses, already rehearsing apologies. But it was too late. The narrative had escaped them. Marcus turned to leave. He didn't look back. Cameras followed him, but he walked with quiet certainty, as though the crowd, the chaos, the flashing lights were nothing compared to the weight he had carried all his life. Darius clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Brother, they'll never forget tonight." Marcus's lips curved in the faintest smile. "Good. Neither will I." As he stepped into the terminal proper, his phone buzzed. Messages from board members, from politicians, from friends. The world was watching, the world was waiting, and the world had already chosen its side. But Marcus Ellison wasn't finished. The airline thought a canceled flight was the end. The next 24 hours would show them just how wrong they were. By dawn, the world knew his name. The video of Marcus Ellison being threatened with arrest had climbed from a shaky cell phone clip to the #1 trending story across social media. Millions had watched the steward sneer, heard the words, "You've got 10 minutes or I'll call the cops," and then seen the calm, unshakable response of a man refusing to move from a seat he had earned. The footage replayed on every major network. Cable anchors dissected it. Talk show hosts quoted it. Commentators framed it as a mirror held up to America. A story of dignity denied and dignity reclaimed. At the airline's headquarters, panic brewed. Executives huddled in boardrooms, screens flashing with real-time analytics. Stock prices dipped. Hashtags multiplied. "Your dignity's a right," "Flying while black." Marcus Ellison, a PR spokesperson, read from trembling note cards on live television, offering a corporate apology. But it rang hollow. The internet was merciless. Viewers demanded more than carefully worded regret. Meanwhile, Marcus sat in his quiet home office. Sunlight spilled through the blinds. He hadn't slept, but his gaze was steady as he read messages pouring into his inbox. Letters from strangers, notes from civil rights leaders, even messages from CEOs of other Fortune 500 companies, men and women admitting they had faced similar battles, quietly thanking him for standing tall. Darius called him, voice groggy but fierce. "Brother, they're scared. I just saw a clip. Some senator said she's calling for a federal inquiry. You understand what you set off?" Marcus exhaled, slow and measured. "I didn't set it off. They did. All I did was refuse to move." Later, that afternoon, Marcus appeared at a press conference. The crowd was enormous. Journalists, activists, community leaders, even celebrities who had rushed in to stand behind him. The young woman who had filmed the incident sat in the front row, clutching her phone like a lifeline. When Marcus stepped up to the podium, flashes exploded. The room hushed. He leaned into the microphone. "I'm not here to destroy an airline," he began. "I'm here to tell the truth, a truth too many already know." He paused, scanning the room. His voice was calm, but each syllable landed like a hammer. "I was told my seat didn't belong to me. Not because of paperwork, not because of money, but because of perception. Because when some people see a black man in a suit, they don't see a CEO, they see a problem." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "And when I refused to move, I was threatened with arrest. That moment wasn't about a seat. It wasn't about a flight. It was about a choice: accept humiliation or stand firm. I chose to stand." Applause thundered. Some shouted his name. Others wept openly. Marcus raised a hand, calling for quiet. "But hear me clearly. This isn't only my story. This is every story. The woman told to cut her hair to look professional. The man followed in the store because someone assumed he was stealing. The child who sits in class but never sees their potential reflected back in the textbooks. This is about the weight of 1,000 little cuts that slice dignity from people every day." His voice deepened, resonant. "I didn't ask to be a symbol. I only asked to sit in the seat I paid for. But now that the world is watching, I'll say this. Respect is not optional. Dignity is not optional. Humanity is not optional. The applause rose again, rolling like thunder, filling the hall. Behind Marcus, Darius stood tall, arms folded, his presence a wall of strength. The young woman recording wiped tears from her eyes, knowing her small act, hitting upload, had lit the spark that turned one man's humiliation into a national movement. The fallout was immediate. Within days, the airline CEO resigned. Stockholders demanded sweeping reforms. Training programs were announced, policies rewritten, oversight committees established. Other airlines scrambled to review their own practices, terrified of becoming the next headline. But more important than the corporate scramble was the conversation erupting in households across the country. Families debated at dinner tables. Teachers brought the clip into classrooms. Churches wove it into sermons. The story of Marcus Ellison became a mirror. Uncomfortable, necessary, unignorable. 1 week later, Marcus sat for an interview on national television. The host leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Mr. Ellison, after everything, do you feel vindicated?" Marcus smiled faintly. "This was never about me. Vindication doesn't come from headlines. It comes from change. Ask me again in 5 years. If a young black traveler can sit in first class without suspicion, then maybe I'll say yes." The host nodded, visibly moved. The camera panned closer, catching Marcus's calm, unwavering gaze. And he finished, with words that would be replayed for decades. Dignity should never be negotiated, not on a plane, not in a boardroom, not anywhere. The screen faded to black. Final reflection. The story of Marcus Ellison was not just about a canceled flight. It was about the daily, grinding fight for respect faced by millions. His refusal to move became a symbol of resilience, a reminder that sometimes the quiet act of standing your ground can shake an entire system. The lesson was clear. Racism thrives in silence, but dignity thrives in courage. And now the question is passed to you. What would you have done if you were in Marcus's seat that night? Share this if you believe respect should never be optional.